If your music tastes run the gamut, you might want to put the new Focal Aria Evo X speaker line on your audition list. Yes, I'm talking about Focal's recently announced line of speakers that include a bookshelf speaker, a small tower, which is what we're reviewing today, the number 2, as well as 2 larger towers plus a center channel. The number 2, again, it's the smallest tower speaker in Focal's new Aria Evo X line, and it has a 3-way bass reflex or ported design that consists of 2 6.5-inch bass drivers, a single 6.5-inch mid-range driver, both of which use Focal's flax cone material, and a 1-inch aluminum and magnesium inverted dome tweeter. Now, the 4 drivers and the dual ports combine for a reported frequency response of 45 Hz to 30 kHz. Now, that isn't full range, but in room, the 2s will likely sound deeper and richer than their specs would lead you to believe. They have a sensitivity of 91.5 dB with a nominal impedance of 8 ohms, but before you get too excited, Focal is very quick to point out that the number 2 can dip as low as 2.9 ohms. This means you're definitely going to need a capable amplifier or receiver to get the most out of these speakers. The new Evo X line is available in 3 finishes: a high-gloss piano black, a walnut, and the high-gloss moss green you're seeing here. In certain lighting, the green finish is very dark, and it's going to read more like black, something you might be surprised about if you're just looking at Focal's product photos. Whichever finish you choose, you'll only see that reflected in the speaker's side panels. The front and back of the speaker are clad in leather, which is a very nice touch, but my favorite design element is the glass top. The speaker sits on an aluminum plinth with adjustable spikes, making it very easy to level and secure the speaker. Now, stylistically, I am not the biggest fan of the flax drivers, but I can easily cover them up with their magnetic grills. We've paired the Focals with just about every amp, preamp, DAC streamer we have. Now, to save time, I'm going to skip over every combo we've used and focused on a few favorite pairings, starting with the Eversolo A8 and Audiolab 8300 XP, followed by the Primaire Pre-35 and 35.2 amplifier, Yamaha's 1000A integrated, and the Denon A1H receiver. The Focal is neutral and revealing enough to hear differences in associated equipment. For example, the Eversolo gear kept the focus on detail and dynamic contrast. Now, in contrast, the Denon added a mildly warmer, more laid-back, and softer sound when listening in stereo. As for the Yamaha, it fell somewhere in the middle. Not as nuanced as the Eversolo, but definitely not as laid-back as the Denon. It's a great option if your budget for speakers is larger than your budget for, say, electronics. If you want to step things up, the Primaire combo works very well and has a similar sound to the Eversolo Audiolab pairing. Regardless of the electronics we use, the Focal sounded best, placed about 2.5 feet off our acoustically treated front wall with almost 10 feet between them, which placed them 12 feet from our listening position, and that's more or less in line with Focal's own recommendations for the speaker. Now, taking in-room measurements at our listening position, both on and off axis at a volume of 75 dB, revealed a mildly boosted response in the bass with a mostly linear mid-range that tapers off as you head into the highs. However, the highs do pick up as you near 20 kHz, which gives the Focals a sensation of liveliness and detail to its overall response. Additionally, this speaker scales wonderfully as volume increases, resulting in no measurable change in their response, which is good news for those of you who like to rock out. Viewer Carl, I'm looking at you, buddy. But measurements mean diddly without real-world listening, and for me, the Focal sounded really, really good. There's a growing trend I'm noticing with newer Focal speakers. Each new Focal is more and more linear across the entirety of their response. Now, the number 2 isn't giving me like KEF vibes. KEF, on the whole, is still a more linear and composed speaker, but the number 2 is more neutral-leaning than older Focal designs. Is that a good thing? Well, that's going to be up to the individual. Like I said, unlike prior Focal speakers, I'd be genuinely surprised if there were complaints about fatigue with this speaker, even with its mild rise in treble energy. One thing you don't have to worry about is what you listen to. These speakers sound great playing a variety of music. Even in our large room, the Focals managed to eke out a bit of extra oomph down low, hitting 40 Hz very comfortably, though the sensation of bass, it sounded and it felt greater than that. Now, feathering in a subwoofer, especially in a large space like this one, will provide you with a glimpse of what the Focals are missing. Now, I used 2 different subwoofers during my evaluation of the Focals. I used the KLIPSCH SPL 100 as well as the KEF's new KC92, though not at the same time. On its own, the speaker's bass favors impact and punch over absolute detail. For example, the kick drums throughout Perfect Circle's second studio album were controlled and mostly bloom-free. In comparison, I have experienced better texture and more minute detail from the KEF R11 Metas, which I suspect has to do with the difference in these speakers' cabinet construction. The FOCAL is a little bit more alive or resonant in spots compared to the KEF, but nothing that I think you should be worried about. Resonance, it's not always a bad thing. The FOCAL's resonance gives the two a more energetic vibe, which honestly, I didn't mind. As for the mid-range, I loved it. Artists like Dominic Fils-Aimé, Diana Krall, even Robin sounded very true to life. I've heard more low mid-range weight, again, from speakers like the KEF, but the FOCAL's articulation and agility can be really addictive. Similar to Yamaha's NS2000A speaker we reviewed in 2023, the FOCALs have an organic presence. They're not as live sounding as, say, our KLIPSCH Cornwalls, but they don't sound like studio monitors either. If that's too flowery a description, just know this: they're good. Switching gears to the treble performance, I really like the Evo's inverted dome tweeter. It is a Goldilocks tweeter for me, composed and fatigue-free at all volumes, including levels I don't frequently hit. Carl, talking to you again. There's enough top-end sparkle without sounding overbearing or worse, artificial. What I liked most is how agnostic the tweeter is no matter what type of music I threw at it. Even poorer recordings didn't phase these speakers, so kudos to FOCAL's engineers for this one. This brings us to the soundstage and dynamics portion of the review. Spatially, the FOCALs, as you might expect, are quite good. Now, had the Bowers & Wilkins new 801 signatures not arrived around the same time, I probably would have ranked the FOCALs even higher, but the 801s have pretty much redefined what soundstage in our room means, so just about anything might be a letdown next to those. Now, is it fair to compare a sub-$5,000 speaker to a $55,000 one? I suppose it depends on where your alliances lie. Regardless, I wasn't not going to compare them, seeing as how they're here at the same time. Should one expect there to be a delta? Yeah! Still, the FOCALs are very respectable. Taking things to a more even playing field, though, the KEF R11 Meta's separation and just absolute delineation of sound within the soundstage is just a little bit better, with the FOCALs coming in a very close second. Dynamically, the FOCALs are more snappy and livelier than the KEFs. If you listen to a lot of electronic, pop, or rock music, the FOCALs, at least for me, are better suited for those genres. The FOCALs take less volume in order to come alive compared to the KEFs. While the FOCALs are not KLIPSCH level exciting, they do fall somewhere in the middle, which could be a good thing for many of you. I found the number 2s enjoyable at virtually all volumes, which is just another plus. If you have skipped ahead to this section, you will have missed comparisons that I have already made, and I would recommend that you, be kind and rewind and watch from the beginning. At roughly $5,000 for the pair, the new FOCAL Aria Evo X No. 2s are in the middle of some pretty hefty competition from speakers like Yamaha's NS2000A, KEF's R11 Metas, SONUS FABER's LUMINA 5, MARTINLOGAN Motion XT F100, and KLIPSCH's FORTE 4. That is quite a list. So let's start at the bottom price-wise and work our way up. At around $3,000 for the pair, you can save a little money by going with the LUMINA 5. Like the FOCAL, the 5 is a more space-friendly tower speaker that looks and sounds great. The LUMINA doesn't have as much of a rise in the bass though, so it may not give you the full range-like feels the way the FOCAL can. Both speakers are largely neutral throughout the mids, with the FOCAL being just as extended while sounding a little bit more refined and less peaky at higher volumes. These are two very evenly matched loudspeakers, which is best is going to come down to your personal taste. Next up is MARTINLOGAN's Motion XT F100. I know, it's not the big dog in the line, but the XT F100 may be the best all-arounder if you're shopping MARTINLOGAN. The F100 is a little bit more dynamically punchy, and it definitely plays deeper and with greater authority, hitting below 30 Hz in our room easily, which may negate your need for a sub. The Logan's AMT tweeter might be an acquired taste for some. I liked it, but I prefer what FOCAL has done with the Evo X here. The FOCAL does a little bit better with subtle detail compared to the Logan, but both are just really solid speakers. The FORTE 4, one of our favorite speakers from the KLIPSCH Heritage line. Similar to the Cornwalls, it is a great loudspeaker, especially if you take the time to set them up correctly and feed them a good signal backed by quality electronics. There's a vibe to a KLIPSCH speaker that is unique to them. So in this matchup, it really is going to come down to whether or not you like the KLIPSCH sound, because these two speakers sound nothing alike. If you like KLIPSCH, specifically the FORTE 4 or the Cornwall, then no amount of anything that I say is going to change your mind. If you hate KLIPSCH, you're already typing your comment letting us know, so don't let me interrupt you. Moving on. The Yamaha NS2000A may go down in history as one of the greatest, I can't explain it, but I just love them, loudspeakers. Seriously, I don't know what it is about the Yamahas, but similar to Focal, I just want to listen to them rather than evaluate them. If it matters to you, objectively and in our room, the Focals do measure better. But aside from that, these are two very evenly matched speakers. And then there is the KEF R11 META. I know the KEF is technically more expensive, but not by much, so if you're shopping for one, you're probably looking at both, or at least you should be. In my opinion, the R11 META is the better speaker. It's more refined, more neutral, and continues to serve as a personal reference. As much as I enjoyed my time with the Focals, and I did, the R11 METAs aren't going anywhere. But before we get out of here, I know at least two of you are going to ask me about the Focal Aria K2s we reviewed a couple of years ago. We reviewed the 936 speaker back in Austin, and we were less than enthusiastic about them. It was a good speaker, but if you remember, we had just reviewed Focal's Diablo Utopia Evos, which no speaker wants to follow. The K2 was not a Utopia killer, and if I'm being honest, neither is the Aria Evo X. I'd still rather have these, though, over the K2s, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. As I wrap up my thoughts on Focal's new Aria Evo X #2, I am reminded of all of the other Focal speakers we've had on the channel over the years and how, more than maybe any other speaker brand, I've been of two minds when it comes to their sound. I either really love them or I kind of hate them. Regardless, I'm always game to listen and find out which side of the spectrum their latest speaker is going to fall for me. And I think this is one of Focal's better speakers, especially if you're shopping up market without, needing to sell your kidneys. So yeah, highly recommended.